Oh, we're in touch now with Bob Nelson from Wyoming Liberty Group. Glad you came on the program. I was reading your article earlier today, and I think you have decided that the best way to make a point is talk to people about beer.
Well, it seems like an appropriate analogy this time.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you said free beer, I mean, your article would be viral right now.
It would. It would. Foamy beer is not quite so attractive.
Okay. So what were you writing about?
Well, I think everybody likes either beer or soda, but it's not one of the thing that beer and soda have in common is foam, right?
Right.
But it's not the foam that we want. It's beverage.
Right.
In education, what we want is instruction in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is foam.
Right.
So we here at Wyoming Liberty Group wanted to know what voters would think about a requirement to have more money spent in the classroom. So we ran a survey and asked the question whether people would be in favor of a requirement that 80% of education spending be spent in the classroom.
Now, some people might be surprised that it isn't around that number already, but the reality is, if we were to say, hey, we're going to spend a bunch of money, I mean, we're just going to spend a whole massive heap of money on education here in the state of Wyoming, and we already spend more than most other states out there, then, well, most of that money is going to go to the classroom, teachers, supplies, because that's what they tell us. But the reality is, doesn't a lot of it just wind up in the bureaucracy and in building new buildings?
Well, yeah. The reality is that 60% goes in directly into the classroom. 40% is going to other things, administration, support, and overhead. But when we ran this survey of 600 people across the state, we asked the question, would they be in favor of 80% going directly into the classroom? And we were surprised at the result. The result was 25% were somewhat in favor of that, but more interestingly, 48% were strongly in favor of that concept. So in the sum of those two, then, is 73%, a massive majority of people want to see 80% of spending done on direct classroom instruction rather than something else.
Okay, now, if the average citizen understands this, and it seems like a no-brainer to me, then why, when money gets into the educational system, does it wind up going anywhere else?
Well, it's an interesting question, Glenn. Nationwide and among school districts in the state, it is common to see that 60-40 split. But as you said earlier, that's not what people expect. Mm. That's not what our survey results tell us people are expecting. 60-40 clearly is not living up to expectations. Now, the interesting thing about this is we're spending, well, LSO projects we're going to spend about $16,500 per student this year. Of that, about $10,000 is direct classroom instruction. Now, interestingly, if we held that $10,000 constant and added $2,000 for administration, support, and overhead, we'd be at $12,000. That's about the national average. And the fascinating part of it is that split, $10,000, $2,000, would be very close to the 80-20 split that people favored in the survey.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we talk about the money going straight into the classroom, so I can assume then it's not just straight teacher's salary. I mean, you need supplies and so on.
Right, yeah. We looked at the Wyoming Department of Education's accounting manual, which is online for anybody to refer to, and the definition of what goes into this category is the activities dealing directly with interaction between teachers and students. It can take many forms. Classroom assistance, it can take place in a home or a hospital, or can be done via radio or computer, or so it's anything directly between teachers and students. So it's a broad classification. And the fact that 80% is not going there is news to most
right.
folks.
Okay. Now, If Wyoming, since you did the survey, if the state of Wyoming decided, okay, we're going to spend more money, like Wyoming Liberty Group says, focused, concentrated on the classroom. In doing that, though, is there the possibility of saving money in other areas? I mean, some people hate the mention of the idea of cutting the school's budget. But what if instead we focused the money and found out we had some savings?
Good questions. Again, Glenn, you're right on point. If we were to cut Wyoming spending per student per year down to the national average, we would save over $400 million out of the total school spending budget between localities and the state. That's real money. And when you're in financial difficulties like we are, that should be thought about pretty carefully. Even at that, though, if you decide to keep spending in total and put a larger chunk into the classroom, you're probably going to bust the budget. We probably can't afford that. But another question on our survey, Glenn, asked people whether they were in favor of cutting the education budget in order to save money. And as you rightly pointed out, a majority of people were opposed to cutting education spending. What's interesting about it is that the majority was much, much smaller. It was 54% to, I think, about 41%. So a predominant number of people were opposed to it, but not nearly the kind of majority that we see being in favor of 80% spent in the classroom. So why not keep education spending where it currently is and simply shrink the administration support and overhead side and save a lot of money in the process?
Well, and instead of getting rid of teachers, I know there's some people who are going to hate me saying this, but you could probably just get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and streamline the amount of, let me say it for you, idiotic paperwork that gets done at a school, which has nothing to do with teaching our kids. Streamline the way they do business. I mean, a private industry, if it finds itself too top-heavy and too bureaucratic, will just streamline that and get rid of it and save a bunch of money. Then that way they can spend their resources on growing the company, or in this case, spend it on educating the students.
Right. I mean, if these superintendents say in a given district were spending their own money to run the district, they would find some savings.
Yeah.
But along those lines, there are many things that go on in administration that are necessary. But we did some work here recently to see how many staff people there are in the schools in relation to the number of students. And Wyoming ranks second in the nation for the number of adults in the building in relation to students. We've got, it's on the order of between 5 and 6 students per adult in the building. You have to ask the question, why do we need so many adults? Are our teachers, and a bunch of those, a large number of those people are administrative people. They're not teachers. We're above the national average in administrative people. So are our teachers not able to manage our students? Are our students more unruly, difficult, more challenging than kids in, say, inner city Chicago?
Right.
Or do we have some padding in the administrative side? I don't know, but I think there's some examination necessary in that area.
Okay. Well, you've been writing extensively about this with your beer suds analogy. Where do people find your work?
wyliberty.org.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Glenn. Thank you.
All right.